We do want to say very Merry Christmas to all of you. Happy Christmas. Some of you may not want to be merry. That's okay. For those of you who are stuck at home, those of you with the dreaded COVID in the domain allergy, we miss you guys and hope you don't feel too bad. All right. So welcome to Moreland Salvos. It is great to be here. It is great to join with you in a way that we haven't been able to before. So today we are talking about the wise men, and they came to bring gifts to Jesus. Today you have all come to church, dragged along perhaps, but each of you has sacrificed a couple of hours of your time to pay respects to the spiritual heart of the Christmas tradition. You bring a gift, whether you realize it or not, and I consider you wise. Well done. But let's talk about the wise men who are not actually, well, anyway, we'll get to this. Back in 2020, just before COVID, I had the incredible privilege of traveling in Europe with my little sister. We traveled, we stuck basically to Italy and France. My little sister lives in London and I was there for the International College for Officers. So, of course, you do a bit of a trip beforehand. It was great time, good fun. One of the serendipitous moments of our travels was when we arrived in Florence. In Florence, it was the 6th of January when we arrived. And the 6th of January is, does anyone, right? It's the 12th day of Christmas. My true love gave, no, right? We got that? So January 6th is the 12th day of Christmas, otherwise known as Epiphany. Thank you. And we can all talk about what Epiphany means later. But anyway, in Florence, every year on the 12th of Christmas, January 6th, they hold a procession of the wise men. Epiphany is the celebration of the wise men. And on this day, it's called the Cavalcade of the Magi. And 500 to 1,000 people, all dressed up in medieval clothes, march? They don't march. Whatever. Hang out behind 3 guys dressed as wise men. These people from all over Tuscany, lords, ladies, knights, hunters, farmers, soldiers, religious leaders, drummers, and incredible flag waving / throwing companies. They all parade behind these wise men, and thousands upon thousands of people line the streets of Florence as this cavalcade kind of weaves its way through the streets of Florence. And it's all about remembering the time when the wise men get to Bethlehem, and then they're going through Bethlehem trying to find Jesus, the baby. And so they wander through Florence, and they eventually get to the square outside the cathedral where there's a life-size nativity set up, and they kneel before the life-size nativity and offer their gifts. The thing is, a spectacular show, but it's not biblical. Did you know that? Have you talked about the fact that Christmas has got so much crap associated with it and not actually the real story? No? Did you know that? Good. There's a few nods and it's not going to come as a huge surprise. So here's the thing. First of all, the Bible does not say that there were 3 wise men. It doesn't even say the 4th one said they knew a shortcut. It says they had 3 gifts: gold, frankincense, and merchandise, right? That was the 3 gifts. Secondly, the Bible does not mention camels. No mention of camels. And we love the image of 3 kings traveling on tricked out camels across the desert, kneeling at the manger. But there's the next problem. They weren't kings. We 3 Kings of Orient are is a great traditional song, but it's not biblical. Did you know that? Finally, the Bible says the wise men came to a house, not to a stable, where Jesus was living with Mary. In fact, Jesus was probably at least a year old, able to walk and talk and speak ancient Greek. Actually, there's no evidence that he spoke Greek, but still, Aramaic at least. So you see, I'm talking today in a Christmas sermon about something that didn't actually happen at Christmas. Hang on a second. But it's true. It's part of our tradition. It's part of our story. In fact, Matthew wrote about it in Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. You can read the story there and see if I'm telling you a bunch of lies, but it's true. All we get from Matthew, we don't get names, we don't get camels, we don't get kings, we don't even get a stable. All we get is a star, some magi, and 3 kinds of gifts. So, there's something else we need to understand here. We cut away some of that traditional stuff and to figure out what actually is going on. Who were the Magi? The Magi were skilled people in philosophy, medicine, religion, natural sciences. Not that science itself had been invented, but they were the proto-scientists. But they were also soothsayers, interpreters of dreams, spiritualists, greatly interested in astrology. And so when a new star appears in a particular part of the sky, it led them to believe in the birth of the Christ child. They were scholars, learned men. They were intelligent, more so than most of the rulers. They loved laboratories and libraries and stargazing. These were the ancient world's scholars and scientists, such as they were. They were from the Parthian Empire. Has anyone heard of the Parthian Empire? No, it didn't last long. It's only 500 years. But it was the empire. So Israel is here. Bethlehem, Judah, birth of Jesus, that's right here on the edge of the Roman Empire. And right over the border is the Parthian Empire. Well, actually, it's a desert because no one wanted to live there. Who cares? But then the Parthian Empire. So this is where we believe these wise men came from. In the Parthian Empire, there was no particular religion, but that's not to say they weren't religious. There were religions from all over the place. From India, right on their eastern side, all the way through Iran and Zoroastrianism. And then, of course, they still had Hellenists, the Greeks and the Romans. They worshipped their gods as well. So there was this place and this kingdom and this empire where religion was everywhere, but no one religion stood out. There were even some Jews, interestingly enough. So it's easy to believe that these magi knew something of the prophecies of the Jewish people. And particularly, we think they knew Numbers chapter 24, verse 17, this kind of words which say, "There shall come a star out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel." This star and scepter, signs of a great king born into the line of Jacob, the house of Israel, descendants of Abraham. This king would rule the whole world according to prophecy. And this is interesting too, because the Parthian king, just as an aside, was known as the Shah, or for the great emperor kings, the Shah and Shah, which means king of kings. So there you go. So there was this Jewish prophecy that said there would be a king of kings from Israel who would rule the world. The Magi were not Jewish, but they would have known of the Jewish prophecy. But they were not believers in the Jewish God Yahweh, because they didn't know that much. They were deeply spiritual. They knew that something was there beyond the physical, beyond the natural, something supernatural, something divine, something. In many ways, these guys were very similar to the world, to many people we find in the world around us. These guys were on a spiritual search. They see things in the world around them that cause them to question, cause them to be curious. I mean, we live in a time where there is a blending of multiple faiths, right? We live in a time where there are multiple expressions of spirituality, multiple understandings of the divine. They didn't know a lot about God, but they knew and they believed that the universe was trying to tell them something by putting this new light in the sky. This light for them was an invitation to search, to discover, and ultimately to worship. They didn't know where to find the new King of Kings, but as they traveled through deserts and crossed mountains and forded rivers and all that sort of stuff, they endured hardships, faced bandits, all for the sake of finding the newborn Shah of Israel. First, they went to Jerusalem, Herod's palace. That makes sense. If you're looking for a newborn baby who would be king of the world, you would know the baby would be born in Israel, so naturally you would go to the palace of the king. Here we go, Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea, during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born king of the Jews? We saw his star when it rose and have come to worship him." So, of course, this is a surprise to Herod. Herod, is disturbed at this newfound threat to his authority and power, and he calls in scholars and teachers and the people to try and understand where this baby was supposed to be born. When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed with all Jerusalem, and when they had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, and they sing him this kind of song. So he learns it, right? So the Magi then head off to Bethlehem, and like Florence depicted, they wandered through Bethlehem looking for this toddler, Jesus, the one who would be king of the world. Then think about how weird this must have been for them. They've traveled for years to find this newborn Shah, and they end up in a little house in Bethlehem, not a castle, not a palace, not a kid born to a ruling family, not a kid born to a wealthy family, not a kid born to a famous family. So weird. Completely unexpected, but true nonetheless. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. They opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. It's so weird that they found this child completely unexpectedly, and yet they were convinced. There was none of the trappings of royalty, none of the trappings of wealth or fame or reputation, none of that. But they were convinced when they found the truth. So convinced that they handed over gifts, very expensive gifts, which were obviously quite important because within a matter of months, Mary and Joseph have to escape to Egypt, right? Because Herod goes on this murderous rampage. They were convinced, having carried these gifts so far, spending huge amounts of money on the gifts and in the travel, they get to this boy and they are convinced. This Christmas, I want to encourage you to look at the light that Jesus has unleashed on this world. To take a look at the things that have happened as a result of Jesus being here. We take it for granted, but so much of our society is built on Jesus. Hospitals, universities, schools, government, law courts, all these things are based on who Jesus was and the things that he taught. Now, don't get me wrong, none of these things are perfect. The problem is there's humans involved. And a lot of them can get quite corrupted and broken and get it wrong and need to be recorrected. But by and large, there are a lot of things in the world around us that Jesus has unleashed. You then might talk to a Christian for whom a light has been unleashed in their lives, and they will tell you, there is something here. Keep searching. Keep looking. There is a hope, a joy, a peace, and a love that shines from Jesus and his followers. You may not know Jesus. You may not understand Jesus. Jesus as a person may not make any sense to you. But I hope that you see in the world around you enough evidence, even if it is just a pinprick of light in an otherwise dark sky. There is something in this person worth seeking, pursuing, and finding. Perhaps you've grown up in church And just like the story of the wise men, so much about Jesus has been added onto by tradition and all this other stuff that gets attached to this little kid. I encourage you to cross the desert, strip away all of that stuff and search for the child, the person, the heart. Because what Christmas says, what Jesus says in his very being is that I love the world. We believe in the birth of the King of Kings. And his very decision to come to earth, to live and teach, is a message of love and light to you, your families, the world. And I pray that you find that light and share that light this year. My encouragement is to keep searching. Strip away tradition, strip away all that other stuff. Find the truth, the light. We're going to watch, listen, sing a song. Light of the world. And as we sing, is a sign today, as a thing today, as a response today, I encourage you, if you would like, to come and to take a light. I did check these and they work. So I encourage you to come and take a light as a symbol of what we search for, the true heart, the true Son of God who lived and breathed and continues to live with us in our hearts. So let's watch this, and I would encourage you to come and to take one of these. Now, if there's enough, I would like to invite you to take more than one and to give it to somebody else and perhaps tell them a little bit about what I said, which means you probably should have been taking notes. But you can take one of these and you can give it to somebody, or you can keep it. And as I said, afterwards, if there's more, you can come and take some more. I have lots, and you can give them to people, because it's an interesting thing, you know. We sing carols by candlelight, and we don't often think about why. But it is a symbol of the light, the purity and truth of what it is Christmas is all about. Let's